guys, it's Gabby, and today is week 2 of Hamilvember. If you did not see last week's video, I announced that every Tuesday in the month of November, I'm going to be uploading a Hamilton-related video to count down to my 16th birthday, Tuesday, November 29th, in which I'm going to be seeing Hamilton in Chicago. So for today's Hamilvember video, I'm going to be bringing you a book review. Back in September, Crown Publishing sent me a copy of Alexander Hamilton's Guide to Life by Jeff Wilser to review on my channel, and so I'm going to be doing just that in today's video. This review is not going to be spoiler for the most part, but I am going to be talking about events from history that pertain to the musical Hamilton, and if for whatever reason you don't want to be spoiled for that musical, if you're the kind of person who's like that, because I know I've heard some people who just really don't want to get spoiled, then I would leave if this sets a trigger warning for you. All the things I'm going to be talking about are of course history and of course common knowledge, so it's not like I'm specifically talking about a fantasy novel spoiler type thing. It's a completely different situation. I don't think it's going to ruin anything for anybody, but I want to pose that and kind of put that out there because I don't want anybody to get spoiled if they aren't really aware of the type of content I'm going to be discussing. But that being said, I'm going to get right into this review. Alexander Hamilton's Guide to Life by Jeff Wilser is probably the most reader-accessible biography that I have ever picked up, and that for me makes it the biggest 5 out of 5 star read because I usually never pick up biographies, and when I do, I'm usually really intimidated by them because they're usually very long and very lengthy and very hard to understand. And when I picked this book up, I was just so pumped to get into it because of its writing style and the way that it's made very simple and very reader accessible. And I think that's the biggest reason why you guys should pick this book up, maybe compared to other biographies about Alexander Hamilton, is because the story is so reader accessible in many countless amounts of methods, and I'm going to break those down for you within this review. So the first thing is the way that this story is written. What we have is 10 different chapters that focus on different aspects of Alexander Hamilton's life or different methods or focuses of his life, and sort of poses the question of how can we as a reader take these methods from Alexander Hamilton's life and adopt them into our own life to make ourselves better people, and also what can we learn from Alexander Hamilton to improve on our own life, which I think is a really interesting way of engaging the audience and getting them to think not only about themselves but about the person that you're discussing in the biography. And I think that that's just a really great way to engage the reader because most biographies don't really channel the reader at all, and it's just straight focus on the person that is being written about and never so much, engaging the reader and getting them to think about themselves and what their life is like in 2016 compared to revolutionary times, because they are two such different times, which is why a lot of these aspects may not necessarily translate over. But it's still, a good thing to think about because there's many aspects that do transfer over and some that don't. But you kind of get the message that you can take away from Alexander Hamilton and the way that he lived. So another great thing that I really love about this book is the chapter headers. They have this absolutely fantastic illustrations, which I'm going to show you guys. And I think that this is just really fantastic because most biographies do not contain pictures. And so by having that, I feel like it just makes this story more reader-friendly and more accessible and maybe less intimidating to pick up, which is great because so many people can be intimidated to pick up biographies because of their length and because they just contain lots of words. So by having those pictures, and there's also little brackets like this that are kind of like little informational pieces that just kind of are also a little bit of a way to make the story less intimidating. I think that's fantastic, and just the way that the story is broken down is something that allows the story to be less intimidating because it's broken down in a way that's relatively short and relatively easy to read. And let me give you a little bit of an explanation. So the story does contain a table of contents, and like I said, this story contains 10 different elements of Alexander's life, which are self-improvement, career advancement, romance, money, style and etiquette, leisure, friends and family, leadership, office politics, and honor. And then within those you have mini chapters, which, for example, career advancement is move quick, say what you believe no matter what the cost, see the forest and the trees, find a worthy mentor, pick up the slack, exit with class, go to work for your promotion. And it's within all those things that are then specific topics under career advancement. So it's just a really great way to even more further discuss these different components of Alexander Hamilton's life. And each of those mini chapters that I discussed are like a page or two long, so it's nothing that's really intimidating. And as well, you know, as not being intimidating in the style that the book is written, the text is also not intimidating at all because the author writes with this fantastic humor and this way that makes everything really relatable and explains everything really, really well, which is so important because most people that pick up these books are not history experts or buffs or people that may want to get into a political figure for the first time or may have to read about this certain political figure for a school project or class or whatever. And so it's interesting that the author decides to actually break everything down and be able to explain everything a lot more and make the story more reader accessible rather than, you know, just straight off listing facts and not containing that humor in that way of making this story more accessible to readers who are interested in learning about Hamilton. Another great thing about this story is that the fact that it specifically caters to fans of the musical, which is a lot of the people who are going to be picking the story up. So I think that it's great that the author specifically acknowledges that. And he points out things that are specifically different from the musical to Alexander Hamilton's actual life. One example of this, and there's countless amounts of them, which the author directly points out and says, this is how it happened in Alexander Hamilton's real life, but this is what you see in the musical. He specifically points it out. One of those examples is this duel between Philip and George Eaker that takes place in 1802, which is 2 years after the election of 1800. And the way that we see it takes place in the musical is that Philip dies, and then we have the election of 1800, which is very much reversed in Hamilton's real life, because then from the election of 1800, that is what causes Burr to want to duel Hamilton because Hamilton endorsed Jefferson instead of Burr in that election of 1800. So I think that that whole way that the story is changed is very interesting because that is such a big component, because you can't have the duel between Hamilton and Burr if Philip is not dead yet. So that whole switch of history, the way that that narrative was written compared to Hamilton's real life, I think was really, really interesting to see how that was manipulated, and also, you know, to see other examples that are pointed out and sort of why those certain things are done. And there's countless amounts of other examples in this book, which is definitely why I recommend that you pick this book up if you are a fan of the musical, because it allows you to get a better understanding of what's fact and what's fiction within the musical, and just to learn more about Alexander Hamilton's life. All in all, to sort of wrap this review up, this book is just absolutely fantastic for anybody who's interested in learning more about Alexander Hamilton, regardless of whether you've listened to the musical, whether you're a history buff, or whether you're just getting into history for the first time. This story is a perfect way to open yourself up to Alexander Hamilton in his life, because he is such a fantastic political figure and somebody who just deserves to be known a lot more than he was acknowledged for. And this story does a fantastic job of acknowledging Hamilton and pointing out some of his flaws and some of his more successful qualities and how he accomplished so much, as well as just explaining it in a way that makes it more accessible for the reader. And I think that this is just a fantastic biography to pick up, and I would definitely recommend picking this book up rather than another biography that's out there, because the story is a more easier way to transition into the life of Alexander Hamilton, because everything is so simply explained and so reader accessible. And it'd be better to get, you know, this version that is easier to understand and then go into something that may be a little bit harder if you want to get more information. But this story, I love it so much, and I definitely recommend that you guys pick it up if you sound a little bit interested in it and if you liked any of the components or ideas that I mentioned throughout this review. So that's pretty much it for my review of Alexander Hamilton's Guide to Life by Jeff Wilser, and I want to send a huge thank you to Crown Publishing for sending me a copy of this book to review. I had an absolutely amazing time reading it, and I'm so glad that I got that opportunity. So thank you so much, Crown Publishing. You all are the best. And to quickly end this video, I want to wrap up with a few announcements. First, it is election day, so if you have not gone out and vote yet and you are able to, go out and vote, because that matters. And this specifically has to do with Hamilton's life, because it's going out there and vote that impacts your country, that makes you an American citizen. So go out and do that if you haven't done that yet. Your voice matters. Go and do that. And then a quick Hamilton announcement. The Hamilton Mixtape is up for pre-order right now, so if you want to hear all of these fun exclusive and all of these tracks with a whole bunch of amazing artists, then go and do that. I will leave all the links down below. But that being said, that is it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you next week. Do not throw away your shot. Goodbye,